Morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from. Today, we are doing yet another episode of the Serene View on constructive argument. Now, if you're thinking, what is constructive argument? I mean, how can arguments be constructive? Well, constructive argument is all about bringing diversity back to social media, back to the net. I mean, we are kind of all in this echo chamber now where, we repeat after each other and we polarize. So I'm hoping to bring multiple views into every issue. So my name is Serene. I'm your host for the Serene View. And today I have with me Denis. Now, Denis, a couple of weeks back, made the mistake of using four words. He said, irrationalities of corporate life. And that was it, right? They all went like, Denis, you have got to do a show on that. So today I have Denis here with me. Denis, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, thanks, Serene. I'm a refugee from finance and accounting. I moved into HR and I specialize in HR tech. So all things to do with tech over the last couple of decades, I suppose. And it's interesting. I also have other interests as well. Remote work. I've worked remotely for nearly 20 years. I've got very involved with that and a few other things besides. So things that keep me interested. So that's me.
Thank you very much, Denis. Okay, so I mean, when we pick this topic about the irrationality of corporate life, I was repeatedly told essentially that, look, no one will argue against it, right? There is just no way of arguing against the irrationalities of corporate life. I mean, the fact of the matter is corporate life is irrational. We all know it. Now, I thought, you know what? We're not going to argue against the irrationality of corporate life. We're going to do two things. Number one is we're going to share war stories. Denis has 30 years working experience. He has his fair share of stories. I've worked also for almost 20 years. And yes, I have my share of stories too. The second thing is that we're going to talk about is really why are we doing this to ourselves, right? All these irrationalities, everybody seems to agree that we're irrational. Why are we irrational? And why are we still putting up with it? So let's start with, Denis, let's start with a story, right? What is the most gruesome, irrational story you can think of? Go.
There are so many. How long have we got? I think, when people talk about corporate life, the phrase comes to mind, and I know some of you have already heard it from me and you're going to hear it again, is when you're sitting there at your desk and the boss comes along, or who he or she is, and says, we've got to do this. And you say, but hang on, this is stupid. And the boss says, I know it's stupid, you know it's stupid, but just let's do it. And the extension of that is I say, well, why did you agree to do it? And they said, look, I just gave up fighting against it. So I think that really sets the scene. I mean, the most stupid things. Let me tell you a story now. I hope the I hope the guys who recognize the story don't come and look for me. I joined one company, and this company was obsessed. It was a subsidiary of an overseas company. It was obsessed with headcount. So I looked at how they did the headcount, and it just didn't make any sense. Apart from the fact that because to keep within the headcount, they were hiring expensive temporary staff to make it all look very interesting and official. So I couldn't make head nor tail of it. So I decided for the next 6 months, every month, I sent in the same damn figures. No matter what happened. And do you know what? Nobody actually ever said anything. They never questioned it. So I know that all of that was. So you
send in the same head count regardless of how many people were sitting in your office.
Yeah, I looked at the calculation and I said, I really don't see how they arrive at this. I know the whole thing's a lie anyway. You've got about 40 temps drifting around the whole organization, costing us so much a day, just so you can preserve the headcount figure. So I thought, if it's that dumb, I might as well continue to play dumb and send the same figures until somebody says it's wrong. Then I might have a look at it. So That's not the most horrendous story, but I mean, that just gives us a flavor of the stupidity that goes on, really. And it's all, all that effort. Think about all the years that people were striving for days to get these figures together because they didn't use an HR system. That was in the days before. They worked for days and sweated themselves and worked long hours to send these figures out that obviously nobody was looking at. Or there were other people like me higher up the food chain who were saying, oh God, this doesn't make any sense. Let's just sling it higher up and see where it goes.
Yes, Tiffany has come to say, like, continue to play dumb, she says.
Yeah,
yes,
definitely. I'll give you another one as well. I mean, organizations are completely hidebound by rules. And if there's a case that really illustrates that very clearly, it's the budget. The budget in normal terms is a guide to what next year or whatever is going to be like. But no, in the hands of the bean counters, the budget is written in stone. We are not going to spend more than £1 million. We are not going to do it. I actually sat at a board table and heard some guy who's the finance director say, we were discussing the opportunity of buying another business, which would have increased our business and was actually a perfect fit. And the finance director actually sat there and said, I'm sorry, guys, we don't have the budget to do this. I just sat there open mouthed. I'm not going to spend £20 in order to make £1,000, that sort of thing. So, so it's all about, it's all about.
I was going to say, I just thought of one today. I was just discussing with my friend, right? We had a client, and as as these things goes with clients, we actually sat down and said, okay, would you want us to do? What kind of thing you want? And we were basically just going around looking at their work processes and documenting it. And there were so many ways to document it, right? So we gave them a choice and go like, which one do you like? And she picked one, and I was like, that's the most like onerous way to do it. Are you sure you want it? Yes, she said so. We were not so sure. So we generated her one sample, right? We gave her one sample. And she looked at it and she was very happy with it. Yes, this is exactly what I wanted. And then we generated more, we went back and forth and so on and so forth. And then finally it came time to submit it to the level above. And she went like berserk. She's like, this is terrible. It doesn't look good. And it's too onerous. It's too complicated. Nobody can understand this and so on. And I was like, yeah.
You see,
why?
I think to get to the root of all this, I think we have to look at how businesses start. I don't think at all. I think it's a bit like rock groups. When you think of the Beatles or you think of all these really big superstars, most of them don't start off to make money. They start off to play music and get girls. Now, I'm not saying that's how business starts, but business.
Come on, that's a bit sexist. I'm sure there was those who was trying to get boys. That's like prejudice. No, but I just pulled up Colin's comment because he's saying exactly what you're saying, right? Like, how did it start? Did the irrationality start as the consequence of so many rational decisions? Like, we all get together and make perfectly rational decisions, and the net effect of which is insanity.
Well, it starts off, you get two guys together and they say, I've got a great idea. I want to see if it works. Everything I've ever started in business or got involved with, there's been really a question of a challenge and let's see if we can make it work. So you get an organization, shall we say, that two guys get together and say, I've got a great idea and let's put it in practice. Oh, and we'll have a motto, do no evil. Until you have an empire that's actually levying a tax, an unofficial tax on internet businesses. But that's another story. I think I have
no idea which company you're talking about. Really, I've never heard of this company.
They'll probably shut off my browser. So and do you know what happens? It all works. You get enthusiasm. People are working hard all hours and they do this stuff. And then you have to have an accountant. And then, and in the moment of hiring people, your vision gets diluted. Whether you like it or not, the people you employ are never, ever going to be as involved as the owners or the founders or whatever are. That I think that's the point in a way. And these owners and founders can never quite get their head around, why aren't people as dedicated as I am? Well, the answer is pretty simple when you look at the bonus you're writing for yourself every year, but that's another story as well. So you dilute the involvement. Then it's a bit like a crab. A crab has to change its skin every so often. So it slides out of this great shell, and in this exposed state, it scuttles under a rock until the shell hardens. And that's exactly what happens in an organization. It's what I call corporate arteriosclerosis, that you actually get reams of phalanxes of accountants and people like that around you. The message gets. Are
there any accountants listening to us at the moment who would like to comment on this? And
if you think about it, there's a mosquito just popped up. Let's think about it. If law and tax were actually a hell of a lot simpler, written in terms that lay people could understand, we wouldn't need it. I mean, big corporations, they actually hire whole rooms full of people to intercompany accounting. Company subsidiary A is charging subsidiary B for something. You've got a whole battery of people sitting there doing that. It's totally non-productive, except from the point of view of saving tax, which is the point about all this. I mean, if tax was simpler, you wouldn't need all this infrastructure. But I think what happens
in Singapore, so you're talking to the wrong person here, is what I'm trying to say. Well, I will tell you about Singapore tax in a while. You're talking to the totally wrong person. It takes me 15 minutes to file my personal income tax every year. I kid you not. Because all the companies have to just submit their salaries to the company. And then they already know how many kids and how many whatever you have that they're going to give relief for. And all they're asking you is, this is what we're going to tax you for. This is what everybody else has declared about you. Do you agree? And if you don't agree, you can adjust. And if you agree, just click yes, and that's it. You're done.
No. That you see, that's how personal tax works in the UK online, and that's super. But you get some smart guy says, well, if we do this in the books, then we can save this. And that's how it all starts, tax avoidance, which is totally legal. Yes. I'm not talking Pandora Papers here. I'm glad my name doesn't appear. But I mean, if you look at it all, that's how, it gets complicated.
Well, Colin is giving us, I've asked for his war stories, and his war story is it takes 34 days to put together the monthly accounts. And I'm like, Colin, all this company has to do is be in business for 1 year. You will be like, you'll be more than a month late. They just have to be in business for 1 year. Can you imagine if this company was in business for 10 years? They'll be like, look, we can give you last decade's account for our monthly account, but we can't give you, the last couple of months. Never mind.
Should have taken a leaf out of my book and send the same figures all the time.
He said the budget cycle was madness. He once had to predict revenues for a product that she hadn't developed that was to be launched into a new market using new technology, and he was told she wasn't allowed to make it up. It had to be based on facts.
Yeah, well, actually, any correlation with the truth is
there
entirely
is such a thing as, what is that? Fake news, right? So I'm sure there are fake facts that you can make up somewhere.
You do realize that right now a whole raft of accountants around the world are rushing to look at the figures and see if we've been fixing them for the last 6 months. Not that I've got anything against accountants. Some of my best friends
No,
are
no, no.
accountants.
I hope
I
that there's
used
an
to be one.
accountant online now. Like, come and defend accountants. Somebody come and defend accountants already. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, Colin says that they have fixed it now. It was several years ago. Oh, I'm glad to hear that they have fixed it. You know that it no longer is 34 days because really, I mean, 34 days after a year, you'll be like, I can give you 2 months ago. After 10 years, it'll be like, I can give you last year's monthly account. But I'm glad they fixed it. Yes, yes. I
You
mean,
see,
Tiffany is
yeah.
also going to think for a war story for us. Tiffany, come on, give us your war stories. So,
I think
see
I
the
think
Colin online.
trying to explain why this happens. I think we just have to look at the evolution, the trajectory of
Yes.
how a company works. There's this thing about legislation. Now, the companies I have or I'm involved with all have very simple rule, which is pay your damn taxes. We're not looking to avoid anything. I think I can sleep at night knowing that somebody's not going to break down my door and seize all my possessions. So you pay the taxes, and it can be complex. But going back to what I said, the spirit of the company gets diluted. And it's like, I remember I was advising a recruitment company many years ago who was starting up, and there were some ideas that came out. I said, well, why are you offering a guarantee for people who don't stay? You work hard to find the right people. You get them there, they interview, and they get the job. And then because there's no proper onboarding process, or the whole thing is actually a sham, the people leave inside of 3 months, and you have to refund them 100% of the fee. No, sirree. But they were saying they got the business up and running and very successfully. And then they decided to open another office, or they were talking about it. And I said, the minute you open another office, you are diluting your efforts by 50%. You've got now a span of 2 locations. And what happens when you've got more than one location, or even more than one floor in a building? You have cultures, the culture of office A and office B, or the culture between the ground floor and the 4th floor. Those guys on accounts on the 4th floor. I keep picking on those guys, don't I? Or the people those people in operations, the people in operations on the 3rd floor. They're crazy. I can't work with these guys. So the culture is what happens too. The division between locations, no matter how small, also develops cultures. And within these cultures, we have little kingdoms, if you like, arise. And I'm sure that many of our listeners will recognize when these little kingdoms like to have their own thing. So when they're
But
building,
you see, Dennis,
yeah,
the thing is, why is it that, I mean, why are companies like that? Because arguably, by the same token, we all come from different families, right? I mean, I live in an apartment block. Every apartment has a different subculture within it, right? Or maybe I'm delusional to say that I don't think most of them have wildly irrational family life. I don't know. I hope not. Anyway,
they probably do.
yeah, they do.
Yeah,
You
but
think so? So not
well,
just
well,
these
you
little
see,
companies, but like every family is living an irrational family life inside, and they're all going crazy. It's just that we don't know it. Hey, isn't it
actually,
Thoreau who said men
I
live
think I
lives of
think we do know it. I
digester?
think it is happening. But I mean, for instance, your apartment probably is immaculate. I suspect that everything
No,
is.
no, 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 no.
Well, no,
I
but
have no such ambitions in life. No.
I'm taking you as a for instance, and then you go to the next apartment and it's chaos, and then you go to another apartment and the whole thing is empty or something. So I think those different cultures, depending on which part of the task they're focusing on. If you look at it, accountants are very driven by procedures and process and so on. Operational people are dealing with problems all the time and how to manage stuff. Sales people only have one end point in view: sell more stuff. So they all look at the business from a different point of view. One thing I did try with some companies when I was in mainstream HR was to develop a map of the organization, not an organization chart to show who's best, but really the interrelationships between the departments. If you in accounting don't do your job, this happens. If you guys in operations don't pass the paperwork through to accounts, they can't pay the suppliers, blah, blah, blah. So maybe that's more, and that's what's missing. Because, you know, traditionally you join a company and there's this sort of onboarding and all that stuff, but they don't really tell you very much about what happens out there on the fourth floor, you know. So there's a kind of breakdown, isn't it, in the silos.
I don't know if that's true, but I mean, the people who are listening to us, I know Colin is very like, an expert in this. Like throw in your guesses. Why do you think this is happening? I mean, CJ says, oh, this is his war story. Business travel reimbursement. They're given daily budgets of how much they can spend per day of business travel. Instead of taking the whole amount divided by a number of days of travel, accountant like to focus on daily expenditures. So they had to ask for receipts on different days to make sure the numbers match. Did you tell them that on the day that you actually fly, your expenses will be a bit higher because of, the air ticket? Does it work that way?
But you know, it's entirely true, because I remember one finance director had the idea of saying this is the daily amount. Let's say £100 a day. We're going to allow for a hotel, and everything you save on that 100 is, you keep. So I said, I don't think this is going to work, because these guys will be staying in flop houses for £5 a night, get robbed or attacked or lose all their belongings just so they can pocket the other £95. So
No, I have had a similar experience where somebody sent me out with okay, your daily.
Hello, Serene. Well, okay, I'll continue on with the story anyway. Yeah, so we killed off that
I
idea.
have suffered from a bad. Hold on, just give me one moment. I have suffered from a bad computer which has died, and now I'm on another computer.
Okay,
yes.
No problem. That is a great war story anyway. I think, and one I can wholly relate to. So let's give the accountants a bit of a break here. Another aspect, one of the zillion aspects, is the external consultants bit. And I know, because my life is as an external consultant, but not a big name in all this at all. So what happens is when the board decides to change things, I think we need change. Now, everybody below the cocktail deck actually knows what goes on and what's wrong. But no, we hire these guys to come in and do stuff. They're parked on our lawn for about 9 months to a year. Usually,
I'm going to defend that. Look, I am a consultant.
Me too.
I think so's Colin. I was just going to throw this because this is funny. And the reason I got thrown off, according to Elaine, is because I was going to say something super controversial. Yes, the super controversial thing I was going to say is that, for $300, they gave us $300 a night, and then sent us to a place where the cheapest hotels in motels cost more than that. I was like, who came up with this budget? And we had to top out every night. Yes, so that was what I was gonna say. Yeah, so I mean, some of the reasons why, Colin said that irrationality is from human behavior, protecting status, seeking power, keeping it. Colin, can I ask you this? I mean, are you trying to argue that humans are inherently insane? Because if irrationality stems from our behavior, is that what we are actually trying to say? That, I mean, humans aren't very rational things after all? So let me know. Hang on. It says everyone acts in a way that's rational to them, even if they're not aware of what's causing their behavior.
I think actually what happens is the organization assumes another persona. It's actually an amalgam of human behaviors. It's the sum total or the lowest common denominator of human behaviors that actually you put together all these pieces and you come up with it. It's like a Frankenstein, isn't it? So, it's made up of different bits. It has no relationship to actually the people who work in that organization. There was no way on earth that I, as a human being, would send the same stupid figures every 6 months, or every month or whatever. But because the piece of me that they took and put into the organization is, they sowed this brain.
So you turn up to work with your worst self. Is that what you're trying to say, Dennis?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
The piece of you that turned up is a psychopath.
No. They brought out the best part of me, which is the work smart, not work hard bit. Fundamentally, I'm lazy, and that. But so. but and I think that explains it.
Yeah.
When we look at that, we're bringing all these pieces together, and Colin is quite correct by saying, you've got all the people who gravitate to these organizations are rather different in their psychology.
Yes. Well, Elaine is saying something I think quite interesting on top of that, which is that it says irrational is a tough one. It depends on what you anchor rationality to. So what is rational will be different if you start with survival of the fittest versus a more noble perspective of human nature. And lots of people are rational and yet nuts is what he thinks. And he says humans are not insane. They have a skewed understanding of reality. So I must say this though, that I totally, like he said, Collins agree, and I agree with Colin, which is everybody is sane to themselves and rational to themselves, but the behavior may not be. So I will give. I shall not name names. This is somebody I know quite well, right? Okay, so shall not say any. Okay, I know a certain lady where the plates must line up so that the same flower is showing in, like, so plates turn around and they've got different patterns, right? So the pattern must line up exactly for the entire cupboard. So you imagine that after you've washed the dishes and dried it, you are spending like an equal amount of time adjusting the plates just so that they can be stacked up, different sizes, different shape, but with the same repeating patterns everywhere.
Well, and this person.
I'm not being diagnosed with anything, so
Very interesting.
Okay, yes. So CJ talked about, CJ, I would have loved to have a 3-person stay in a room, or but unfortunately I was the only one there. and I mean, okay, I didn't think about having a sleeping bag and sleeping out on the street. So sorry, I'm too Singaporean, so I went there. I got a hotel room and I did that. Oh, Colin is defending the person in the plane. Colin, are your planes like that too? I want to see
what's
Colin.
Wrong with that? On so many levels. I think
yes.
I think here's the thing. The definition of business is to make as much money as possible, probably. There's not actually, if you were talking about the pure capitalist model, so you would say that businesses that pay a minimum wage, or businesses that give lots of money to local charities and that, are not operating as they should do. I think that's the baseline of rationality for a business, is to actually, optimize what it's doing. We as humans are involved in this.
I was just going to say that both Elaine and now Colin is defending it, right? So you talk about optimizing what you're doing. It says they are always rational, but not always aware of their motivations and reasoning, and they're satisfying a need, however deeply within. To which Elaine has Okay, wait, hang on. Before I go on saying Elaine, if I'm mispronouncing your name, like, holler
Alan,
and like yell at me right now, right? Okay, he says
Alan.
Nadal became a superstar with the same insanity. It's basically about control. And
Yes.
it's about having a sense of control in an unpredictable universe. Is passion, is pattern and rational seeking.
I think
I
that's
would honestly think
reasonable.
that anybody who thinks they can control this universe is, the
No,
definition of insanity.
well,
Yeah.
who would want to do it? I think that's more the catch-22 question. Who would actually want to do it? Um,
I do. I do.
I think that we all want levels of control within our own lives. And it's correct about Nadal, and it's the same with Bjorn Borg. Once these guys are outside of that sporting loop, what sort of people are they? I think we all want control over our lives, and that's why so many people who are in employment are miserable. Um, you know, nobody willingly does this stuff. But
Really? So you think nobody willingly goes to work? So Colin is talking about optimize what over what time period. I
okay,
think.
optimize. I think a business, is like a machine. It's got to work in a certain way as smoothly as possible with as less friction as possible. The minute you start wandering off that, here, let me give you an example. Gigantic company, almost ruling the world at one stage, founded by a couple of guys with vision. For years, they sell software which is badly bugged. Every time there's a new release, it's badly bugged. They amass a huge amount of money, and then one guy wants to save the world by injecting everybody against malaria. I'm saying, why didn't he just ask us for the bloody money in the first place? I would have quite willingly, I wouldn't have had to suffer with Windows Vista or any other hideous iterations. He should have just said, look, give me $500 and I'm going to save the world. He didn't have to go through all this rigmarole.
No. I mean, I must argue this though, that I actually trust the guy now more because the fact that he could push through an empire with that bad a software model means he's very capable, right? So therefore he has a good chance of hitting malaria. If he had just come up to me and go like, give me $500, I'll be like, no, buddy, I don't think you can do it, man. Okay,
well,
so
I mean, he had a near monopoly, didn't he? He had a near monopoly, and in that, like businesses, they can't help but make money. So,
yeah.
You'd have to be really bad to lose money in that situation.
Colin says that businesses also think they're being rational without understanding the mechanism and their connection with the broader environment.
Well,
Yes.
you see, I'm slightly at odds with that because I believe businesses should operate almost in a vacuum. Now, I'm only arguing this from a philosophical point of view. Businesses that actually get involved with helping local communities and charities, that's just PR. That's not about the business. You might say that I'm going to sell more units because I present a charitable face. There's a lot of tokenism around the diversity inclusion stuff as well.
Yeah.
And those are, tokenism. And that's what it is. It's about sales.
Yeah.
It's cynical.
Yes.
It's cynical.
Yeah. No, but I'm HR and I'm definitely not Jedi, right? I am on the dark side. So I'm the Sith, not the Jedi. So yeah, I'm with you on that. I think there's just so much tokenism on the Jedi bit. But Elaine has asked, okay, I'm not sure whether he's asking me or asking you about whether you would have given it to him, presumably talking about the $500 for malaria without being him. So I would not, because, okay, this is what I truly believe, which is there are so many worthy causes out there, and there are so many people who are willing to dump money in the worthy cause. But at the end of the day, you need some, maybe not someone, but at least a group of people who are capable to take that money and put it to good use, rather than, and I can tell you so many horror stories of like, charities that are put up in the best of intentions that end up like, so for I'll tell you the war story later, but I kind of felt that I want the confidence that there is this person who is, he doesn't have to be like, altruistic. He just has to be capable and competent. able to get the job done, like execute, and then I will be willing to fork the money. So the war story I was going to tell you is about. So in Singapore, for the longest time, they encourage students to go to poorer Southeast Asian countries to build schools and to build homes for the villagers there. And then one fine day, they found out that in many of these places, the orphanages, for instance, to take an example, are composed of kids that this enterprising people have gone to their parents and go like, rent me your kids, or sell me your kids. So these are kids with perfectly good parents who either have sold them because they were so poor, or who are living in orphanages when the Singapore students go over so that they can volunteer. And then when they go back, then these kids go back home to their own families. I'm like, so there's just so many of these, like, charitable causes, good heart, good money, that end up being like that. So no, I wouldn't have given the money. No. Yes. Okay. So Colin says, what about the Burnville Village? Port Sunlight Setter.
Yeah.
Okay. I am so sorry. I don't know what it is. Do you know what
Okay.
it is? Tell us about it. We need to see the modern equivalent, he says.
Yeah, I mean, you see something similar in, say, Costa Rica, where they have huge banana plantations. And so it's like a little community. It's a community that's built and developed around the business for the workers that work there. They have shops, they have all those things. So it's that sort of socialistic idea of creating a community of people where they all work on the same thing with the same employer and so on. And of course, they were very the whole idea behind this is fairly altruistic, is to make sure that your workers don't have to worry about anything, that they are housed and they're provided for and so on.
Can I just interrupt you and ask you, is this communism we're talking about? Look, okay, before we go on to the communism, I mean, I know communism has a bad rap, but I am actually with Karl Marx. I just don't think that is feasible. It's too idealistic. But is it like a communism thing where kind of everybody gets the same amount and so on?
No. There is an employer, and the employer is in business to make money. The employer has actually invested a lot of money to make sure workers and their conditions are actually optimized. So they built villages, they built little towns or little communities specifically for those people to work in, so that they were housed, that they have means and so on. It's not communism, it's really socialism. So no, communism would be if they all built the stuff themselves and so on. And yes, you're right, Karl Marx would have been wonderful if only the people hadn't got in the way.
Yes. If only it wasn't something for humans, it would have been wonderful. It's a great idea.
It works for ants and bees and wasps.
Yes. And the Borg. Let's not forget the Borg. Yes. So CJ has come to say that it's not so much about the sense of control, but rather how to justify accountability. He says, why do training managers always insist on doing a training evaluation? So that the scores are easier to be reported upwards. And what about the distribution of scores, right? If half the class loved it, half of it hated it, is it the same as a uniform lukewarm score? And then what about a few super loud, participants complaining about the workshop, and then training manager panics and the evaluations are like very bad. But
the real drive is it should be about value for money. So 3 to 6 months later, has your behavior modified?
Yes.
But what you do get is, like, on the same day, a happy sheet saying, how was the food? Did you like the trainer? Was she dressed nicely? Totally irrelevant, of course. It's about training is about the value for money.
You see, the problem with the 3 to 6 month one, which I totally agree with you, is it should be the measure, is in the 3 to 6 months, 500,000 things have changed, right? We have had a pandemic, we have had a new manager. There's been a restructuring. We've hired 5 new people. Our sales has gone up by 20%. How would you know which of those factors made a difference in the person's behavior? And if I'm going to be very blunt, I would say that any of those factors would have more of an impact on your behavior than a 2-day course that you took 6 months ago. I mean, let's be truthful here, Yes.
No. Well, here's the thing. How many people go on leadership courses? They send millions of people on leadership courses. And 2 days in the leadership, or 3 days, or 2 weeks, or whatever. A very good colleague of mine, Paul Kearns, once wrote that the fact that you went through the course doesn't prove anything. It's rather like saying if you were if you were a football supporter watching Manchester United, you'd be a better footballer than you were if you were watching Leighton Orient. Now, just going through the sheep dip of a leadership course actually means nothing. And I mean billions every year are spent on leadership courses. Companies send like a whole batch of people on leadership courses. How many leaders do you actually need in a company? It's rather like MBA, and this is definitely an anonymous one. I remember a public body sending 6 guys off on a crash MBA. And you know what? They all got the MBA, and I wouldn't have trusted any of them to run a sweet shop. Really. These people were not commercial in any way, shape, sense, or form.
So, no, I was going to say this, that I and many other parents of my generation have gone through parenting courses. Same thing. I mean, look, mine was still not even 2-3 days. It was a 6-month parenting course, before I became parents for the first time, and I cannot say that it helped me be a parent. I cannot say that. And anyway, CJ says that 81% of people forget training the moment they step out, which was supported by Colin.
And well, that's what happens with people taking the driving test. They drive beautifully until they pass the test, and they drive like idiots after that.
So it's the license to be an idiot.
Totally. And that's another irrationality, but that's another. I have to say one thing.
Colin has come back to defend himself, to defend the Burn Village, to say that it's not socialist or altruistic. They saw that by having a strong society and fit, educated, and happy workforce, they'll be more successful in businesses. And it's irrational to believe that you can have a successful business in an ailing society where people are suffering. Colin, have you heard of Facebook? Like Amazon recently?
An ailing society, I'm not sure how we define that. Is it because of the social divide between rich and poor? Is it the whole thing's going to hell in a handbasket? I don't know what an ailing society is. Yes. I mean, developed societies are so developed that people can't go outside and do anything because the rules and regulations are there.
You know the joke, right? About, the world is going to hell in a handbasket? The joke is that, the demons came out, had a look, and went back. And then the answer of why they decide not to work here, hell has more purpose. At least in hell, we know we know why we are doing it. We are punishing the bad guys. There's a sense of purpose.
No, exactly. Okay. No, you're right. I think
more war stories. I'm just from Tiffany. Recently, she attended a military retirement ceremony for one of her favorite leaders and bosses that she's ever worked for. Upon her arrival, less than 72 hours prior to the retirement ceremony, a colleague and her were tasked with starting and completing the formal script because everyone was teleworking and they were the only people there, I think. So from the chaplain to the side boys to the task staff to the table, everyone was teleworking. So she says, of course, this colleague and I didn't get the bottom bit of it. I'm not sure if that's because it's not coming. Okay, I can read it from LinkedIn. It says, this colleague and I pulled a win in under 48 hours. The retiree had an excellent ceremony. The attendees were pleased by the non-conformity aspect of the traditionally formal event. A lot of laughs, wonderful time, but it was due to the failure of many. There was creativity.
I think this question about altruism and everything working optimally. I think our society is rather differently geared now. I think the level of expectation is higher. So if you put everybody, your workforce, into the same houses in a little compound somewhere, somebody will want a bigger house, Somebody will want more garden. Somebody needs more rooms. Somebody doesn't want to live with all those people. And I think, and why? Because the world and the media out there says you deserve better, which is absolute lies, of course. You don't.
No, Mark Manson, I love his book about, everybody believes that they should be outstanding. It says our whole society is depressed because what is shown on TV is outstanding, and most of us are just sadly not, Anyway, Colin was saying is if you are taking a mechanistic view of how training and leadership development delivers benefits to the bottom line, then you'll be disappointed. Perhaps the basis of this irrationality is taking a mechanistic view of business when it is a complex adaptive system.
Yeah, I think, there's a whole wodge of the business community out there which is dedicated to ticking boxes. One of the measures I've actually seen, which is absolutely ludicrous, is, how many training days of how people spent in the last year, over 500. Great. It's all rubbish, and that is highly mechanism. By ticking all the boxes. I hate to say there's terrible stories in social services where all the boxes were ticked and children died.
I used to work. I used to work for the Civil Service College in Singapore, and all civil servants in Singapore have 100 hours of compulsory training every year. Yes, so
oh dear.
I may get banned from the internet after this, but it'll be my own government doing it.
and how was it? Do you feel you were a better person for it?
Well, no, I was a trainer, right? So I worked. I trained for the college. I worked for the college, and then I was happy to get endless amounts of civil servants coming to train.
Guaranteed employment for life.
Yes.
I mean,
and
tremendous.
CJ talks about how companies hire consultants to solve their problems, only to fire those consultants who point out the problems. I tell you a war story. I once was in a consultancy job. This is an overseas consultancy job. We did a thorough consultancy job, blah, blah, blah. And then we discovered the main problem in this company. So we very politely went up to the big boss, the owner of the company, and said that, maybe
you are the problem.
No, it's not. I was maybe you should not let your mistress run the company. She doesn't even have a position in the company. Maybe you should leave your mistress at home and not let her run the company. We were promptly shown the door.
Really, I'd love to have seen the report you wrote on that.
No, our report was about personality conflicts and corporate culture. Yes,
typical consultant speak. Yes. So yeah, I mean, consultants. What happens is they send along a top gun, and they say, look, we've got this change program. We know what it is. We've got it. It's all worked out. It's in the box. And so you say, oh, great. Don't ask any of my lot. They don't know anything about this. So you hire these guys, and what do you get? You get a couple of grunts who are earning basic, who are learning their trade, sitting in your boardroom for 9 months, unboxing the change initiatives that have been thought up by the higher guys. So, you could have got all this for nothing by actually surveying your own people. I mean, companies like Toyota, for instance, had a track record of process improvements that were voluntarily given by the workforce. So, that was part of what's good for me is good for Toyota and so on. And I think that's the way to do it. Because,
I don't know. I mean,
consultants tend to give you a box solution.
But you are a consultant.
Yes, and
I would
never give a box solution. When I go down to a client, I go with a blank piece of paper and say, right, what's the problem? What are we trying to do? I don't say, oh, yes, here's one I've got on the shelf. Boom, there we are. Doesn't matter if it fits your culture or not.
I ask Colin and Elaine and CJ and all these guys, because I think even Tiffany is a consultant. We're all consultants, right? So I asked them, give No, let's defend consultants. And Colin has come back with is finders, minders, and grinders.
Grinders.
What does that mean, Colin? Speak English. Like, tell us about it. You know, what are the finders, minders, and grinders? Tell us about it. Come on. Yes. So I'm waiting for Colin to give us his
Okay. All right.
inspiration. And look, I mean, most of you guys are consultants. Come on, let's defend consultancy. We can't be that bad. Okay, we're not that good, but
people
No,
say
but
to me, so what's good about what you do? And I say, at the end of it, I save people time, I save them money, and I reduce the possibilities of them choosing wrong. It's as straightforward as that. Hello, here we go.
Yes, no, CJ was the one that says consulting, you should get a longer contract when they make the client feel validated that the client was right all along. Until the naysayer say otherwise, the consultants are fired again. But getting paid a lot.
Absolutely. And also remember that the big consultants have one ending point: to continue to, they almost create a dependency culture. Now, our slogan of one of my businesses, creating capability, not dependency. When I walk out of that door, not only have they got the results, but the people who are involved in it from their point of view now know what they have to do next time. Now, how many, here's a question, I have no statistics, but I've seen this in some of the corporations. How many finance directors of corporations have come from the very self-same auditors who actually audited their books? Now, I'll bet, because I've seen plenty of it, so I know it's going on. Now, that doesn't quite seem right to me, does it? It's like leaving government and then working for a civil contract company.
But that's what they do. And actually, I was going to say this about consultants. How many? You remember earlier on, just now, your first guess was that it was the boss that's the problem. How many of us have walked into consultancy projects only to realize that the very person who hired us is the one who should be fired and replaced with someone else? And then you're like, do I fire him because I may not get paid and hired again?
Well, I think the point is you have to write objectively, don't you? And let them join up the dots. You can't come out and say this person is completely hopeless, is driving you into ruin. You write a report saying the problem seems to stem from X, Y, and Z, and so on. But
no. In the case of that person, we actually sat him down, closed doors, and actually said, like, look, buddy, you want this to work, you have got to get rid of her. And we were like fired on the spot. Yes. Okay. So, Colin's explanation, he says, is Jeff Marlowe's description. The finders are the top guys who get the business. They send in a bunch of grinders, the lower paid minions who roll out the model, and a few minders to look after them and keep an eye on the client. Actually, it's not just consultants. Can I say audit firms do it? Law firms do it? Doctors do it? How many have you ever had, been in a teaching hospital before? Come on.
No, I think no. I understand that model. That's the model for big consultancies, and it works for them. They get fined millions every so often for malfeasance or whatever it says, malpractice or signing off accounts, and that's part of the story. There is another little expression I have, which I hope you're not going to make me turn up for another hour, Serene. It's called the conspiracy of mediocrity in business, in organizations, in corporations. What happens is
you're doomed. You're coming for another hour next month. You're doomed. You're doomed.
Somebody makes a really high-level mistake. It's all over the press and the rest of it. Like you drive the bank into ruin, and they say, and I'm afraid that this person is going to walk away with like billions or millions of compensation. You say, how can that be?
I give you one word: we work. We work. Do you know
exactly? Well, absolutely. I mean, that's a bit of an egregious one, because normally what happens in very big corporations, which WeWork never really was, had a lot of money drifting around, but why do they pay off this great amount? Some people say it's the contract, and there is an element of that, but then there's a whole wad of money. And the secret behind this is that everybody around that board table voting for this wants the same deal when their cockouts have been discovered as well. So it's what I call the conspiracy of mediocrity. And people are absolutely amazed, when people walk out of the door having made a terrible mess. It's because everybody wants the same deal, because everybody makes a mistake. At the end of the day, business is rather like politics. It all comes to nothing in the end. You could be a giant in your field and so on, but at the end of the day, it doesn't mean a heck of a lot. Most of the big figures we see plodding across the landscape are in fact not big players. They are highly paid employees. And that is the case. We tend to get sort of, a bit. I used to see every year in the UK, there's a voting for the 50 most influential people in HR. Well, one of them was the HR director of the Royal Bank of Scotland. Now, let me tell you something. That went down the tube. So when they asked the HR director how this could be, he said, well, HR has nothing to do with the awarding of mortgages and all the rest of it. So my point was, well, if HR has no influence on the business, what the hell are you doing? And if you did have an influence on the business, you were partly to blame. So, and in this list of 50 people, one would, well, I'm not going to mention, but I mean, we are actually allegedly admiring all these people. They're nothing more than highly paid employees in a big job. It doesn't mean you're influential. You might be influential to the people who supply you with services and they send you a bottle of champagne every Christmas. But influence, employees, highly paid employees are not influencers. I believe it's the independents are out there. That's why I'm arguing against corporate thinking, corporate systems, and so on.
Well,
I think it's the rogue.
Yeah, CJ has a good idea. She's like, 3 quotations, because I will ask them to send in their last war stories. It's coming to the top of the hour. She says, 3 quotations, get the vendor you want to work with to ask 2 of their other buddies to give 2 more quotations.
Yeah.
No, I give you an even better idea, right? They say it now, I mean, they even say it in government contracts that we are not obliged to take the lowest quotation. We are not obliged to take the lowest quotation. So what happens is then that I will get you the 3 quotations, still pick the one that I want. I mean,
yeah.
Not obliged.
I see, my business is primarily about HR and payroll systems, and why many vendors don't respond to public tenders is because they're only to make up the numbers. These people actually know who they're going to buy.
Yes.
And everything else. So, that's not just corporate madness, that's sort of governmental madness, which is another kettle of fish altogether.
So all of you who are here with us today, I mean, throw in, like, if this is the one last, like, your last word on the irrationalities of corporate life, you must get this off your chest. What is the last word that you want to say, right? So all of you who are listening to me, throw in your last words and I will faithfully read them all out. So before that, I will give Denis the honor of starting first. Right? Denis, what do you want to be your last word on the irrationality?
I think it's something very topical. There's a trend now of HR digging around in people's social pages. And if they say a picture of you getting drunk with your friends or doing something what could be deemed or saying things and so on, all well and good. That could be held against you. And I've had people telling me stories of, we saw your LinkedIn page or whatever, and we don't think you'd be a fit here. Meanwhile, out there, the self-same companies are being fined hundreds of millions of pounds for fiddling, exhaust emission readings. I don't see people stopping buying VW Audi just because they cheated us for so long. But yet some poor individual is penalized for putting up a rather cheeky picture of them, their out of hours behavior and so on. This reflects on the hypocrisy of organizations. They can actually cheat and lie and do whatever it is they like to do and get fined for it. But does anybody stop buying their products or stop applying for jobs there? No. So, the big guns try to win the day all the time. And I think I'll just, because remote work is very close to my close to my heart, I would say another thing. When heads of corporate organizations say, so people have to commute, so what? Or they say, well, of course, we don't want people to work from home because they're not so committed to their enterprise. I've worked 20 years remotely, and I think that's absolutely nonsense. And it just shows you these big figures at the top of these big organizations are hopelessly out of touch with what's going on. And it goes back to what Colin says, that basically a lot of these people are a bunch of psychos.
I like that as the last one. Okay, so everybody has sent in their last one, except for Elaine. Tiffany says, work on the hard stuff, is what she says. So yes, I agree with you, Tiffany. We should all work to try and be a bit more sane. Right? We are all a bunch of psychos and we do need to work to be a bit more sane. I agree.
Or start taking the hard stuff, either way.
Yes. CJ says, be your own boss.
I was always work on the hard stuff if given the option.
Oh, so you're going to work on the hard stuff. I'm not going to work on the hard stuff, but I might drink the hard stuff a bit later. Yes. Okay, CJ says, be your own boss. Sorry?
I'm suspecting a lot of injunctions in my inbox, by the way. Be your own boss. And that's an important point, because actually, it's like in many things in life, you can't always do that. Not everybody is cut out to be a consultant. You get made unemployed. In the 90s, the definition of a consultant was an unemployed white male manager. And that, we have to be driven. It's not for everybody, especially if you've come from a big corporate background, been used to all those resources, the car, you get a letter sent out when you need it and all that stuff. So be your own boss, definitely. I think there's something in this. People say to me, what the heck are you still doing at your age, messing around with all this stuff? And I said, because I enjoy doing it. When I don't enjoy doing it, it's when I'll pack it in. And I should have given it up ages ago. But no, I find more. And the reason is because I'm my own boss. It's very liberating. It's stressful in one sense, because I think if you own your own business or businesses, you never stop thinking about it. You don't actually switch off. It's running in background. And I don't say this is stressful, but you're sitting in the bath or cutting down trees or whatever you're doing, and ideas come to you and you think, wow, that. So, but being your own boss and managing to do that, don't do it if you're not if you're not cut out for it. Really, don't do it, because you'll drive yourself mad. It's like the boss, the person who wants to be their own boss taking orders. People do offer me jobs from time to time. It's amazing, isn't it? And having read my LinkedIn, and they say, would you? And I say, do you know what? And they give a good lot of reasons, but really, I just need to work to my own pace. And I'll tell you something, and I'm sure all of you are out there, your own boss, you know this. There are days you wake up and think, I am not feeling creative today. This is not a great day. But just thank heaven that I don't have to go and get on a train and travel 2 hours, sit in a dreary office for 8 hours and come back another 2 hours. This is not my day. I'm not going to be particularly productive for whatever reason. We have that option, and that is extremely liberating. But as I say, it's not for everybody.
Well, I mean, Colin says we can agree on that. I'm not quite sure what he's agreeing on, whether he's agreeing to eat the hard stuff, do the hard
All
stuff, be your own boss, or just drink
now,
the hard stuff, right? So come
all
and
of
tell
the
us all of the above.
all of
Okay.
the foregoing. Yeah.
But his last word is people spend years going into the office every day and traveling great distances to meet people in person, when most of it was not only unnecessary but counterproductive, as we now know.
No,
And I
he's absolutely
agree.
right.
I
Colin Colin is a very articulate advocate for what is dear to me, which is let's look at our work again. And thanks to the pandemic, people are actually doing that. And maybe when the tide goes out, only 15% of people are going to be working from home or working remotely. But it's a great start. My word,
yes.
we're saving people.
A new definition of what it means to consult, to con and to insult.
Well, in your case, you start telling the client what their love life is doing. I think absolutely. Yeah, I think I'd have fired you too.
No, well, I mean, I'm sure we said it very, very politely.
I'm
Obviously,
sure.
the report doesn't say that, I mean, say something else entirely, but honestly, we are like, look, if you are not going to get this person out, there's just no way your business is going to do, like, turn around. So what happened is he's been successful for many years and his business has suddenly, in the last 3 years, taken a turn for much worse. And, for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
So, well, that's that.
I think the whole thing of business is the longer it goes on, the more likely it is to fail.
No. It was because 3 years ago he brought his mistress in. That was basically it. That was basically it. And that led her. Can you imagine that she has carte blanche to do anything she wants in the company? Like she can literally fire anyone, assign work to anyone, decide to start on a different business. Like, I mean, okay, that's really. Oh,
Oh, that's
Colin
interesting.
says he's actually an insultant. And she might not be the only one on this call. I don't know, man. The whole evening, I've been hearing some things about accountants and then accountants. I don't know, man. I mean, I don't believe in insulting anyone, but I keep hearing about accountants. I wonder why.
Because they're the lifeblood of the business, apparently. I was going to say when you had this guy with this woman strolling through the business with carte blanche to do what she wanted, I was going to ask you how you got the WeWork gig. Yes, we grow. Yes.
Yeah. But anyway, that was one of the more. I would actually think, in retrospect, it's one of the more hilarious things because we were cracking our head to wonder why. How we had an actual real team meeting for like 2 hours, could not figure out how do we tell this guy that he just needs to get rid of his mistress. Okay, but anyway, yes.
One thing you could have asked, in fact, is why he's done that. It could be that his business was running so well, he wanted some excitement in it, the living riskily bit.
So at the risk of sounding extremely sexist, I will say that perhaps it's not thinking with the right equipment.
Organs.
Right?
Yes.
Yes. That is my personal conclusion. But yes, it could be anything else, But seriously,
and you're absolutely right. Yeah.
I'm like, what are you not thinking with the right, But anyway,
exactly.
yes.
No,
okay.
No.
So next week I'm gonna actually take a break for a little bit. So next week I've got like stuff on, and I'm gonna take a break. We are on like homeschool and everything, and there's 100 million things happening. So I'm gonna take a break for a short while, and then I'll come back with the next season of hopefully more arguments and more fights. And guys, bring it on. And I know that Denis has already volunteered to talk about the mediocrity of work. I heard it.
The conspiracy of mediocrity. Oh God.
Yes, the conspiracy of mediocrity. So you can look forward to that, and then we can talk about others. All right. So if any of you want to put in one last word, put it in now, and if not, then we're gonna call it for tonight. thank you very much to Dennis, but also thank you to Colin, to CJ, to Tiffany, and to Elaine, and to all of you who have joined me tonight, and thrown in your insults, your con jobs, and everything else.
I've really enjoyed it. It's the cheapest therapy I'm ever going to get. No, it's really kind of you to invite me. I'm going to be very careful what I write in future, in case you're out there and pounce on me.
Yes.
Wake me up in the middle of the night to make sordid comments.
Oh yes, no. Dennis is doing this at 6 a.m. So I salute you for it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dennis. Okay, all right. So good night, everybody. Have fun and
thank you.
keep safe. Take care.
Thank you.